Last Saturday morning, in a tranquil American suburb, a retired educator dedicated 40 minutes to clearing grass trimmings from her yard. She packed them into 3 hefty black sacks, hauled them to the street's edge, and then dabbed the perspiration from her brow. 2 hours later, she drove to the horticultural supply store. There, she purchased a bag of plant food for $27. The packaging guaranteed rapid, verdant growth. Its primary components? Nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. The very same nutrients that had been in those black sacks, now gone with the garbage collection. This scenario unfolds on millions of lawns every weekend, prompting a question that the gardening industry tends to avoid. Why do so many seasoned cultivators spend considerable sums to replace what they've just discarded? To grasp the scale of this, consider this figure. The worldwide market for synthetic fertilizers exceeds $200 billion annually. The typical household allocates $50 to $100 each year solely to maintain a lush lawn. A substantial portion of this expenditure is for nutrients that were readily available in yard waste, kitchen compost, and the heap of uprooted weeds by the back fence. The explanation for this paradox involves a century-old chemical process, originally devised for warfare, and a fundamental truth that ancient agriculturalists understood 4 millennia before us. The soil possesses an innate ability to sustain itself if we cease depleting it. Everything discussed in this presentation is free, costing nothing, not a single purchase. All that is needed is grass, kitchen scraps, a container, and a measure of patience. By the conclusion, your perception of the connection between your garden and your refuse bin will be irrevocably altered. 1. A practice predating every empire. A detail seldom found in contemporary gardening guidance is that the longest-standing agricultural success in human history did not depend on a single bag of manufactured fertilizer. Not one. Over 4,000 years ago, in the rain-soaked river valleys of ancient China, rice farmers made a remarkable discovery. After the heavy downpours subsided, they would cut the tall grasses growing along the marshy borders of their paddies and place these cuttings directly between the rows of young rice plants. No machinery, no complex formulas, just a curved blade and keen observation. They termed this practice green manure, and its efficacy was such that those same fields, the very same plots of earth, continued to yield crops for 40 consecutive centuries without becoming depleted. In the early 1900s, an American soil scientist named Franklin Hiram King traveled through China, Korea, and Japan, attempting to comprehend how this was possible. His observations were astonishing. Entire civilizations sustained an average of 3 individuals per acre of arable land, year after year, generation after generation, by treating every shred of organic matter as invaluable. Nothing left the cycle. Grass clippings, food remnants, animal excrement, canal silt, all were returned to the earth. King noted that Western agriculture had a detrimental tendency to wash its fertility into rivers and the ocean, squandering in a few decades what had taken centuries to accumulate. The Eastern farmers he studied avoided this error. Every particle of organic material was considered a valuable resource, managed with wisdom. This wasn't solely an Eastern tradition. Across the globe, Roman farmers practiced similarly. Agricultural writers such as Columella urged landowners to collect organic matter from any available source, roadsides, stables, even wash water, and return it to their fields. The Romans placed such high value on organic byproducts that Emperor Vespasian imposed a tax on the collection of human urine, utilized both as fertilizer and for industrial cleaning. When detractors mocked the idea of taxing urine, Vespasian reportedly displayed a gold coin and uttered the sentiment that money does not stink. That expression endured in Latin for 2,000 years. The underlying principle was elegantly simple. What originates from the earth returns to the earth. Every leaf, every blade of grass, every kitchen scrap belongs within a cyclical flow. So, what transpired? How did countless gardeners sever this cycle, only to pay a corporation to mend it for them? The answer begins in a German chemistry laboratory and involves a world war. 2. From munitions factories to your backyard. In 1913, two German chemists, Fritz Haber and Karl Bosch, solved a significant challenge in industrial chemistry. They discovered a method to extract nitrogen directly from the atmosphere and convert it into a stable compound. The initial objective was unrelated to horticulture. That nitrogen was intended for the manufacture of explosives. The Haber-Bosch process provided the German military effort with essential materials during the First World War. However, wars conclude, but factories often persist. When hostilities ceased, these vast production facilities required a new product to market. The transition was remarkably seamless. Ammunition chemistry rapidly became fertilizer chemistry, birthing a new consumer industry. By the 1950s, synthetic fertilizers had become commonplace in households. Their marketing was effective, appealing directly to convenience. Why endure months for compost to perform its slow, silent transformation when a quick application of green powder could yield noticeable results within a week? It was a reasonable inquiry. The products did indeed promote rapid, vibrant growth. What the marketing omitted was the long-term cost. Decades of research have now demonstrated that consistent and heavy use of synthetic nitrogen disrupts the delicate microbial ecosystem within the soil. Consider it this way. Healthy soil is not merely dirt. It is a bustling community of bacteria, fungi, earthworms, and microscopic organisms, all collaborating to decompose organic matter and deliver nutrients to plant roots. Synthetic fertilizer bypasses this community entirely, supplying the plant directly, akin to an intravenous drip, while the living soil beneath gradually falls dormant. Over time, water retention diminishes, soil structure deteriorates, and the garden becomes reliant on successive applications of purchased product. It resembles an individual subsisting entirely on nutritional supplements, forsaking home-cooked meals. The body receives sustenance, but something vital is lost in the process. No one needed to prohibit compost or outlaw grass clippings. The old methods simply faded from common practice once a quicker alternative became available. It was not a clandestine plot, but rather the natural outcome of economics and convenience. Yet the biological processes never vanished. The earthworms remain below. The bacteria are still present, awaiting activation. The cycle merely requires a catalyst, and the most expedient way to stimulate it may already be present in a pile on your lawn. 3. Preparing the planet's most ancient fertilizer. Here is a detail that most gardening guides overlook. Fresh grass clippings are not merely waste. Laboratory analyses reveal they contain approximately 4% nitrogen, along with significant amounts of phosphorus and potassium, the identical three nutrients listed on every commercial fertilizer bag. As soil microorganisms break down these clippings, they release these nutrients directly into the root zone in a form readily absorbed by plants. This constitutes free fertilizer, available weekly from your lawn. However, there exists a method to dramatically concentrate this power, a technique documented in agricultural texts dating back 2,000 years. Gardeners refer to it as fertilizer tea. The process is straightforward, the outcomes are potent, and the sole investment is a bucket and approximately 2 weeks of patience. Here's how it functions. The next time you mow the lawn or uproot weeds, particularly deep-rooted varieties like dandelions, stinging nettle, or comfrey, these greens should not be discarded. Dandelion roots penetrate deeply enough to extract calcium and potassium from soil layers inaccessible to shallow-rooted plants. Stinging nettle provides iron, phosphorus, zinc, and magnesium. These are not troublesome weeds, they are mineral accumulators. Roughly chop the greens to hasten decomposition. Fill a large bucket or plastic container halfway to 2/3 full. Then submerge the greens completely in water. Rainwater is the preferred choice, as the chlorine in municipal tap water can impede the fermentation process. Cover the container loosely. A piece of mesh or cheesecloth serves to exclude mosquitoes while allowing the mixture to breathe. Now, allow it to steep for 10 to 14 days. Stir it every couple of days to ensure oxygen circulation. A word of caution, as the days progress, this brew will develop an aroma capable of clearing a patio. This pungent, swampy odor is, in fact, a positive indicator, signifying active fermentation and nutrient extraction into the water. When the liquid darkens and the foaming ceases, it is ready. This concentrated tea must be diluted before application. Use 1 part tea to 10 parts fresh water. Pour the diluted mixture around the base of tomatoes, peppers, squash, flowers, or any actively growing plant. For a mid-season boost, it can also be applied directly to the foliage. Plant leaves absorb dissolved nutrients remarkably quickly, so a foliar spray provides a visible improvement within days. A deeper green hue, sturdier stems, and more rapid fruit development. A single batch of this tea, prepared from 1 bucket of grass clippings, can nourish a medium-sized vegetable garden for an entire week. The residual solids, the soggy pulp at the bottom of the bucket, still hold value. Spread them around shrubs or incorporate them into a compost pile where they will continue to release nutrients for weeks. Nothing is wasted and the cycle remains intact. A critical warning before proceeding. If the lawn has been treated with chemical herbicides, particularly persistent weed and feed products containing compounds like aminopyrrolide or picloram, those clippings should never be used in vegetable garden tea. These engineered chemicals persist through composting and fermentation unchanged. They will severely damage broadleaf crops such as tomatoes and beans. A lawn treated with chemicals requires several untreated seasons before its clippings are safe for use in food gardens. However, a naturally maintained lawn provides a weekly supply of free, high-quality plant nourishment awaiting preparation. And grass is merely the starting point. Some of the most effective soil amendments are found in a place most people pass by 20 times a day without a second thought. 4. Kitchen remedies nobody discusses. Every household generates a steady stream of organic material that almost invariably ends up in the trash or down the drain. Eggshells, banana peels, rice water, coffee grounds. Individually, they seem insignificant. Collectively, however, they form a remarkably comprehensive set of tools for enriching soil and addressing specific garden challenges without incurring any cost. Begin with rice water, as this often surprises people. When rice is rinsed before cooking, the cloudy runoff water contains dissolved starches that serve as a potent attractant for beneficial soil bacteria, particularly a group known as lactobacillus. Save this rinse water. Allow it to stand at room temperature for 2 to 3 days until it develops a faintly sour aroma. This acidity indicates that beneficial microbes have multiplied. Applying this fermented rice water around the base of plants delivers a concentrated dose of the very bacteria that help suppress soil-borne pathogens and enhance nutrient absorption. Consider it a probiotic treatment for the soil itself. This method is free, utilizing only water that would otherwise be discarded, and requires minimal effort beyond remembering to set the bowl aside instead of pouring it into the sink. Now, consider the banana peel. As tomato and pepper plants begin to flower and set fruit, their demand for potassium increases significantly. Potassium is essential for blooming, fruit development, and overall plant resilience. Burying an entire banana peel in the soil will eventually break it down, but this process takes months. A faster approach exists. Chop leftover banana peels into small pieces, place them in a jar of water, and add a spoonful of brown sugar or molasses. Let the jar sit for 3 to 4 days. The sugar initiates a rapid microbial reaction that extracts potassium from the peel and suspends it in the liquid far more quickly than simple burial would. Diluted and applied around fruiting plants, this mixture provides a surge of potassium precisely when the plant needs it most. Then there are eggshells, among the most undervalued scraps in any kitchen. Anyone who has grown tomatoes is familiar with the disappointment of blossom end rot. A perfect fruit develops beautifully on top, only to reveal a black, sunken, rotten patch at the bottom upon harvesting. This damage is caused by a calcium deficiency in the plant tissue, and it doesn't only affect tomatoes. Peppers, squash, and melons are also susceptible. Eggshells are composed of over 90% calcium carbonate. Crushing them finely and incorporating them into the soil provides a slow-release source of calcium that builds up over time. For a rapid intervention during the growing season, boil crushed shells in water for 10 minutes to create a calcium-rich liquid. Combine this liquid with a splash of leftover milk, another concentrated calcium source, and a small amount of molasses. The sugar in the molasses nourishes specific soil bacteria that efficiently facilitate calcium uptake into root systems.
No commercial calcium spray can match the comprehensive benefits of this combination.
Finally, a subtle technique for transplanting day. When a young seedling is moved from a protected pot to open ground, the shock of new soil, changing temperatures, and increased exposure can stunt its growth for weeks. Ordinary baker's yeast offers a surprisingly effective remedy. A teaspoon of dry yeast dissolved in warm water with a pinch of sugar produces natural growth-promoting compounds. Applied around the base of a newly transplanted seedling, it encourages root development and helps the plant establish itself more rapidly. It is the most cost-effective insurance for transplants available, and it has been a staple in kitchen cupboards for generations. 4 scraps, 4 solutions, all free. But what if there was a way to automate this entire process? To construct a system that transforms kitchen waste into finished fertilizer without the need for a pitchfork or turning heavy piles. 5.
The effortless composting engine.
Traditional composting demands a great deal from the gardener, transporting materials to a pile, regularly turning it with a fork, monitoring moisture levels, and balancing ratios. For individuals experiencing back pain or stiff joints, this routine quickly becomes tiresome. A simpler method exists, and it functions by allowing biological processes to perform the strenuous work rather than the gardener. Take an ordinary plastic storage bin or a wooden crate. Remove the bottom entirely. Locate a spot in the garden where the soil would benefit from improvement and place the bottomless container directly onto the bare ground, pressing it in a couple of inches to ensure stability. This open base is the key to the entire system, creating a direct conduit between